The voice of terror at sea. Meet our demands or we will kill. In Cairo, the voice of relief. The ship passengers who got away. In America, the voice of fear and frustration for those still held at the point of a gun.
We're a very close family, and this is just tearing us apart.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Like a recurring nightmare where some details change, but the overall terror scenario stays the same, here's what we believe we know tonight about the still-in-progress hijack at sea of the Italian cruise ship Achille Lauro. Exact whereabouts unknown. Reports unconfirmed that one, perhaps two Americans among the passenger hostages may have been killed. All told, Palestinian pirates with weapons and explosives continued to hold more than 400 hostages on the ship, mostly crew, up to 20 Americans among the non-crew. The Palestinians demand freedom for 50 captive comrades in Israeli jails or else. At one point, ship-to-shore radio. Syria on land. The hijacker demands to talk to Israel. At another point, demands to talk to unspecified negotiators and the consequences of non-compliance spelled out. Hijacker, we will start killing at 1500 hours, 8 minutes from when his message was sent. 2 minutes to deadline, the hijacker speaks again. We cannot wait any longer, we will start killing. 23 minutes past the deadline, the hijacker speaks yet again and indicates the killing has already begun. What are the developments, Taurus? We will kill the second, he said. We are losing patience, unquote. That, the conversation monitored today between the hijacker at sea and Syrian officials at Tartus on land. The hijack drama began last night off the coast of Egypt. Egyptian officials are convinced the terrorists were on board the Achille Lauro when the voyage from Italy began. At least 83 Americans were believed to be among the 1,100 on board then. But most left the ship Sunday morning in Alexandria for a short excursion south to Cairo. They were to rejoin the ship at Port Said, but it was then that the Achille Lauro was seized. Former passengers, now in a hotel outside Cairo, know of at least 11 Americans who are still on the Achille Lauro.
My feeling right now is anger. I'm mad at my government for fooling around the last time and not really coming to a decisive impact that this should have happened again.
PLO leader Yasser Arafat denied to CBS News tonight that the PLO is involved in the ship hijacking. Arafat said that he has no direct contact with the seajackers. He added that a high-level PLO delegation is traveling to Cairo to try to establish what he called a joint negotiating position with the hijackers. Also heard from late today, a man claiming to be the ship's captain, one Gerardo de Rosa, a desperate voice under pressure, apparently radioing anyone listening, trying to reassure and warning all to keep away. Though governments and groups all around the world are caught up in this hijack at sea, the ship bore the flag of Italy, and Italy is bearing the brunt of the pressure, caught in the squeeze of what the hijackers want and what other countries may or may not be prepared to do to comply. Richard Roth has the latest from Rome.
The message from the Italian government is, we want to talk. Foreign Minister Giulio Andreotti said one of the first men he turned to for help was PLO chief Yasser Arafat, asking him to help mediate with the hijackers. Italy's defense minister said politics and diplomacy are the ways to a solution, not military action, which he called an extreme to be avoided. Armed forces were placed on alert, but the evidence was all low-key. Helicopters and a radar plane dispatched to Cyprus. Most government experts saying Italy's military options are virtually non-existent.
The only solution they are looking for now is a diplomatic solution using Arafat as a channel to reach the hijackers and to discuss with them.
Trying to find out just who the terrorists are, the government focused its investigation on Genoa, where the cruise began. It is international habit, said one official, to let visitors on board before a cruise ship sails. Authorities are studying a possible link with two recent bomb attacks in Rome at a cafe and an airline office. Palestinian suspects arrested in the bombings here held false Moroccan passports, similar, according to police sources, to a forged document carried by a man arrested last month at Genoa's port. In Naples, home of the Achilles Lauro, friends and relatives waited for news but heard little. Why can't they let some people off, said a woman. Italians have nothing to do with this. Government officials tonight said Italy will not give in to blackmail, but their talk of using Yasser Arafat as a mediator is clearly causing problems. Some hopes for negotiations are drifting away, said a government spokesman, because we don't have American support. Richard Roth, CBS News, Rome.
So far, we've tried to give you as best we can the best of what we believe we know at this moment. Here, among other things, are what we still don't know. How many, if any, of the hostages are dead? Monitored radio from the ship indicates 2 may have been killed. Some diplomatic sources are also saying 2 are dead, 1, perhaps 2, Americans. The White House and State Department say there is no confirmation of this. Where is the ship? It is variously reported heading towards Cyprus or perhaps heading back to Egypt. No one seems certain, or at least no one is saying so in public, just where the ship is. How many hostages? Reports generally agree somewhere between 400 and 420 still on the ship, mostly ship's crew. How many passengers held are Americans? The White House says about a dozen, no more than 20. How many hijackers? Some reports say 7, some say 12. All reports say heavily armed and equipped with explosives. How did they take over the ship? First reports said they seized it off the port of Alexandria, Egypt. Growing indications are that they were on board from the very beginning when the ship left Genoa, Italy. No matter how it began, the United States, the relatives of the American hostages, have a keen and pressing interest in how it will end. White House correspondent Leslie Stahl reports what President Reagan is doing and not doing.
At the White House, no threats, no harsh words, only signs of frustration. President Reagan calling the hijacking the most ridiculous thing. His advisors worked quietly behind the scenes, coordinating activities with other governments.
No, I think all the governments, and particularly those who had passengers on that ship, from more than a dozen countries, are all vitally interested.
A major goal in the administration's diplomatic efforts with Egypt, Syria, and other governments to get the message across that there's no sanctuary for terrorists and no one for them to negotiate demands with.
We don't negotiate demands in a terrorism case. We are ready to listen, but not to negotiate.
Administration officials believe the terrorists have 2 motives: to duplicate the swap of the TWA hostages for Palestinian prisoners in Israel. It worked once, why not try again? And to scuttle the Middle East peace process.
They don't like the direction it's going. They don't feel their demands are being taken into account, and they want to bring it to a halt.
For the Reagan administration, a sad indication that their policy against terrorism isn't working.
It is having to reconcile rhetoric with reality, the need to retaliate, the need for a situation of this sort not to go unpunished. But we're a major power, and it's very difficult for us to act on that basis.
If there is any military action or diplomatic breakthrough, sources say the Reagan administration wants Italy to take the lead. The U.S. would provide assistance and backup. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
3 and 4 and 5.
Just one more routine to go.
Oh, no.
This one helps keep you fit inside.
Fit inside?
It's Kellogg's Bran Flakes. You get lots of fiber to help keep your insides fit and running smooth.
Oh.
And now 100% of the iron you need each day.
How do they taste?
Really good. Come on, you'll like this exercise. You just lift the spoon. Ooh. Kellogg's Bran Flakes does the rest.
Kellogg's Bran Flakes. Take care of the inside.
Everybody loves Super Bran ice cream. Every little child and every little pup. They love when Dixie's Super Bran ice cream. They want to eat the whole thing up. What happened to my Super Bran ice cream? What happened to my Super Bran cone? Oh, what's sad about Super Bran ice cream is when it's all gone.
Better get some more Super Bran from Winn-Dixie, Mom.
The agony of waiting and uncertainty has begun for families of the as many as 20 Americans thought to be hostages on the Achille Lauro. For one set of relatives in New Jersey, the fear is doubly intense. For loved ones who are elderly, ailing, and until now, always together. Renee Ferguson has been with them.
They'd been inseparable, 10 friends who spent weekends and holidays together and who decided to go on a Mediterranean cruise together. It was a dream cruise. Film of its inaugural voyage promised that this was a place to relax, unwind, leave the problems of the real world far behind. But Robert Cantor's parents still had slight reservations about that. The night before they left, they talked about terrorism.
They didn't really think that it could happen to them, but I could sense that in the back of their minds they were somewhat concerned because of the recent developments in the Middle East.
Now that concern has become reality. The Cantors are safe in Cairo, along with 2 other members of the group who stopped to tour the pyramids. But the remaining 6 stayed on board the Achille Lauro. Seymour Meskin's nephew says his uncle stayed behind probably because of health reasons.
My uncle had surgery on his hip and walked with a walker. And as a matter of fact, that uncle and aunt had already seen the pyramids, and I don't think they were especially anxious to go again.
Lisa Klinghoffer's father, Leon, recently suffered a stroke.
We're very worried about not only my father, but a lot of the other friends are not well people either. Some of them have heart conditions. They need their medications.
Carol Hodes learned last night that her father is safe in Cairo, but her mother is still on the ship.
We want people to appreciate the fact that there are Americans on that boat, and they happen to be our family, and what happens to them means a great deal to us. And I don't want them to be like the Beirut 6 that got lost in the shuffle.
Tonight, the inseparable friends are apart. The problems of the world, which they took the cruise to escape, followed them. The dream vacation, now part of an ugly political nightmare. Renee Ferguson, CBS News, Long Branch, New Jersey.
In the background, Israel's recent air raid against Tunisia, and once again, the outcome of a terrorist hijacking appears to hinge on demands made of Israel. Don McNeil reports.
Israel's response, as little as possible. The Israeli cabinet did discuss the hijacking at its regular session, and officials said that Israel has been in continuous contact with the governments of Egypt, Italy, and the United States. However, the government made no response to the principal demand of the hijackers, the release of 50 Palestinians held in Israeli jails. Prime Minister Peres stressed that so far, Italy has not asked his government to comply with the demand, and he appeared to be distancing himself from the affair.
The ship is not in the territorial water of Israel. We didn't get any demands, and we don't have to answer it. And Israel will continue to fight terrorism.
Unlike the TWA hijacking, some of the prisoners whose release is demanded from Israel are convicted hardcore terrorists, not detainees. At the top of the list is Samir El-Kantari, who led a hit team that killed 3 Israelis in the coastal town of Nahariya in 1979. The terrorists are not held in a single prison like Atlit, but scattered throughout Israeli jails. It's also believed that many of the 50 whose freedom is demanded were among Palestinians captured on boats by Israelis in late August. Experts say they were trying to bolster Palestinian forces in South Lebanon, and, say the Israelis, some were planning to infiltrate Israel. Don McNeil, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
Ending a terrorist hijacking at sea by force with an absolute minimum of bloodshed would be one ultimate test of military ingenuity. One U.S. expert today assessed the chances of a successful assault, quote, "If the ship is moving, forget it." Pentagon correspondent David Martin tells us what options the United States appears to have on call.
Late today, an American destroyer like this broke short a port call in Israel and headed out into the eastern Mediterranean to join a second U.S. warship in the vicinity of the hijacked cruise liner. Those are only 2 of scores of U.S. military ships and planes that routinely operate in the Mediterranean and could be called upon if the Reagan administration resorts to force. However, one terrorism expert says those ships and planes, powerful as they are, do not work well against terrorists.
We have had a huge military presence in the Mediterranean for some time. It has provided no protection against our airlines being hijacked by terrorists, and those capabilities don't readily translate into an ability to respond to those situations either.
A Marine Amphibious Task Force, along with the aircraft carrier Saratoga and cruiser Yorktown, are operating south of Italy in an annual exercise with NATO allies. All those ships, airplanes, helicopters, and radio messages could mask the movement of a small, specially trained squad of commandos on a rescue mission.
There will be movements back and forth between the countries, between this country and the Mediterranean in connection with this throughout this period. And it is, of course, totally unrelated to the real-world events of the Eastern Mediterranean.
Pentagon sources say U.S. commandos, like the Navy's SEAL teams, are trained in boarding ships at sea, possibly using miniature submarines, certainly operating under cover of darkness. But like all rescue missions, it would be a high-risk, last-resort operation. Pentagon officials say the chances of a rescue mission depend heavily on the location of the cruise liner. If it pulls into Syria or Lebanon, where U.S. forces are not welcome, the prospects for a rescue attempt would dwindle from slim to none. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
There is one positive hostage development to report tonight in Beirut. 2 British women kidnapped 2 weeks ago were released today, apparently unharmed. They said they do not know the identity of their kidnappers. 12 Westerners presumably are still held hostage in Lebanon, 6 of those Americans.
You're on your way. The world is opening its doors.
I never understood when Mom made me clean my plate because there were places where kids were starving. Now I'm about to walk into a Dow laboratory to work on new ways to help grow more and better grain for those kids who so desperately need it.
Yes, you can make a difference in what tomorrow brings.
Can't wait.
'Cause Dow lets you do great things.
Here's an important question for Metamucil users. Why should you have to drink this when you can get the same laxative fiber in this good-tasting wafer? Introducing new Fiberall wafers. Fiberall wafers are good tasting, easy to take, and clinically proven every bit as effective for regularity. So which would you choose? This or this tasty Fiberall wafer? New Fiberall wafers. Effective, good tasting, easy to take.
Here's the latest on whether the U.S. federal deficit sky is falling and government checks bouncing, with the Treasury warning that the money runs out at midnight. The Senate stalemate over whether to raise the federal debt limit goes on. The fight centered on whether to give the government the authority to pay bills without also requiring a balanced federal budget by fiscal 1991. In Puerto Rico, hundreds of people are still missing. Thousands are in temporary shelters in the wake of torrential rains, floods, and mudslides. 66 people are confirmed dead. Juan Vasquez is there.
The earth slid away without warning. Some 200 homes that had been perched on the sides of the steep and narrow canyon were washed down the hill. They ended up on the floor of the canyon, house atop house. Rescue work was complicated by the difficult terrain. Rescuers were forced to use sledgehammers against walls and foundations to fight their way to areas where victims might be trapped. How many bodies have been pulled out, do you know?
Pulled out as of 1400 hours this afternoon, 22.
And how many may still be in there then?
God knows.
Residents and rescue workers say the hillside consisted of clay and soft stone, which simply crumbled under the assault of the storm. The rescue work was dangerous because the slippery slopes posed the threat of more slides even as the men worked. Many other parts of Puerto Rico remained underwater. Crop fields were transformed into huge pools of mud. Scores were listed as missing, and those who ventured into the flooded areas to look for friends often found they had arrived too late. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, Ponce, Puerto Rico.
Some investors who thought oil was the only answer came up dry. They've seen that tying up all their money in banks isn't always in their best interest. And that following the takeover fad of the moment can lead to slim pickings. More and more, the ambitious investor is following Prudential Bates, whose rock-solid investment strategy is leading the way to the future. Prudential Bates Securities. Follow a leader.
The makers of Tylenol have recently made pain relief better with extra-strength caplets. Look. Caplets are specially designed They're shaped and coated to make them especially easy to swallow. Extra strength caplets, only from Tylenol.
Once man's feet walked free. In time, he developed shoes. Soon man developed athlete's foot. Egad. Today, there's Mycotin with Myconazole, a patented ingredient to cure athlete's foot. Mycotin, the end of the road for athlete's foot.
In Philadelphia, a special investigation commission began hearings today into the controversial events of last May. That's when police and a cult group squared off. As Harold Dow reports, there have been nagging questions ever since.
5 months later, Philadelphia is still searching for answers.
We are to investigate the conduct of all city officials, agencies, and departments.
The confrontation was between police and a radical group known as MOVE. There was a gunfight, a bomb was dropped. 11 MOVE members, including 4 children, died. 61 houses were destroyed, and 250 people left homeless by a huge fire. Initially, Mayor Wilson Goode said that he would take full responsibility, but later the mayor seemed to back away from that statement.
To the extent that there may be a deviation from the plan, which I outlined to them, then they have to assume that responsibility.
And we're saying to Mayor Goode, if you want to take on the police here and try to find us, put the blame on us, then you're in for a political bloodbath, my friend.
What do they think in the neighborhood that is being rebuilt by the city for an estimated $12 million?
All is a lot of rhetoric and accusations going back and forth.
I'm more concerned personally, first of all, about my home.
The hearings are expected to last a month. About 100 witnesses, including Mayor Wilson Goode, are scheduled. The city of brotherly love wants to know why it dropped the bomb. Harold Dow, CBS News, Philadelphia.
In Los Angeles, Little Richard, the rock star turned minister, is reported in serious but stable condition tonight after an automobile accident. His car smashed into a telephone pole early today while he was driving alone at what authorities said was high speed. Little Richard, whose real name is Richard Penniman, came to fame in the mid-1950s. Later was ordained as a minister in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
For the 71st anniversary, Isuzu holds big contest and give factory incentives. Just guess number of Japanese pea pods in jar.
Why is there only one pea pod in this jar?
Winner! Winner! Winner!
You mean this jar with the one pea pod?
Winner! Winner! Winner!
Save hundreds of dollars at the Isuzu factory incentive pea pod truck sale.
If you're concerned about sodium, what antacid do you take? Tums is sodium-free, and Tums neutralizes more stomach acid than the other leading brand. And here's another way to avoid sodium. Use sodium-free no salt instead of regular salt. No salt looks like salt, shakes like salt, flavors like salt, but no salt is sodium-free. No salt, regular and seasoned.
Here's you. Here's your competition. One of you will call AT&T small business experts. One of you won't. One of you will find out how to use long distance
to cover your customer base.
To beat your competition. So who's going to call? You or the other guy? AT&T long distance services. Talk with us. AT&T, the right choice.
We have been, of course, trying to keep you up to date on the latest developments in this still unfolding terror at sea. But let's take a step back from the terror of it and look at some of the root causes and aims of it. Bob Simon looks, as best he can, at the meaning of this madness.
You don't wake up one morning and decide to hijack a luxury liner. It takes organization. Organization implies aims. This latest salvo seems to have been aimed squarely at the latest peace moves in the Middle East. Arafat and Hussein have talked. Perez wants to talk. It has become increasingly clear in recent weeks that all three men would like a deal. That's very frightening news to people who fear they're being dealt out. People like radical young Palestinians who don't trust any of these old men of the Middle East, whose role models are the 600 Palestinian fighters who were returned to the West Bank by the Israelis in a lopsided prisoner exchange last May. As prospects for negotiations have progressed, there has been progressively more violence on the West Bank, proving once again that whenever there's talk of peace in the Middle East, people are going to die. This latest round began once again on Yom Kippur. 3 Israelis were killed in Cyprus by elite Palestinian commandos. Intelligence sources say this could have been Arafat wanting to look tough before making concessions. The Israelis flew 1,500 miles to deliver their reply to PLO headquarters in Tunis. You want to talk peace? Fine. You want to play tough? That can also be arranged. Palestinian rage at the Israeli bombing traveled from Tunis to Jerusalem in less than a day. On Wednesday, an Israeli couple was kidnapped and murdered. On Saturday, 7 Israelis, including 4 children, were killed on the Sinai beach by an Egyptian. This may have had nothing to do with Tunis, but it was a bad week for peace between Egypt and Israel. It was a big week for setbacks. The fact that what you've been seeing this season in the Middle East has featured Beirut and Cyprus and Tunis and now a ship on the Mediterranean cannot obscure the fact that it's the same old war between the same 2 peoples over the same old piece of land. The most ferocious war being waged in the Middle East today is the war against peace. Bob Simon, CBS News, New York.
Recapping and updating briefly now the hijacked saga of the Aquilo Laro, the pirated ship variously reported as either heading to Cyprus or pointed back to Egypt now. The hostages of the some 400, there are still unconfirmed reports tonight that 2 Americans may have been killed by the Palestinian kidnappers who control the ship. Late today, the voice of a man who claimed to be the Aquilo Laro captain radioed that all aboard were safe and warned that all would-be rescuers must stay away. We'll be monitoring this story throughout the evening and reporting to you when and if warranted. In the meantime, Dan Rather, CBS News, New York, thank you for joining us. Good night.
It's my turn to see what I can see. I hope you'll understand this time's just for me.
Oil of Olay has a lot to do with how I feel about myself. It makes my skin look so vibrant. Sheer and greaseless Oil of Olay replenishes to give me a younger look.
Oil of Olay. It can help keep you looking younger, too.
I love Oil of Olay. And when I look this good, look out.
There are lots of furnaces you can choose for your home. But for the most efficient energy, forget all but the gas furnaces. And to cut energy costs further, consider only the high-efficiency gas furnaces. Of those, only one has advanced pulse technology.
The Lennox Pulse Furnace. It will make your heating more efficient.
Take it from Dave Lennox. You can save a lot of gas with a Pulse.
Attaboy, Dave!
Gas, America's best energy value.
Looking for a loan? Tried talking to a financial institution? Big, impersonal. Looks like you need a friend. At Beneficial, we're big.
Hi, I'm Fred.
But very personal. You'll talk to the boss when you talk to Beneficial, so there's no committee, no waiting. Everything could be wrapped up in 24 hours.
Congratulations.
Thanks, big guy.
Thank you.
Beneficial. Talk to the manager, and you're talking to the boss.
I'm Maria Shriver. The latest on the ocean liner hijacking and advice from Dear Abby. Tomorrow on the CBS Morning News.
This is CBS.